So tell me what it is that you wanted to talk about in the first place.
Well, I wanted to talk about just the reentry process, but not just the actual reentry where it all starts at, and that is with the commitment to change in one's life. And because as I said before, too many guys say, "Well, I want to get out," which everybody wants to get out of prison,
Yeah.
but that doesn't necessarily mean they want to get out and be successful, or at least be citizens,
Yeah.
law-abiding citizens. That just means they want to get out and continue the criminal behavior, but just not get caught.
Pretty
So
much.
I did a lot of classes, uh, um, self-help groups, and then I started facilitating these groups. And that was one of the first things I had always told the guys. And it didn't matter if it was, say, anger management or any of those classes. My opening line was to them was always, "I have some good news and some bad news." And they would all look. I said, "Well, what's the good?" I said, "Well, here, look at it this way." I said, because the guys most likely want the bad news first. "Well, give us the bad news." I said, "Well, the bad news is, if you think I had, for example, anger management," I said, "if you think you have a problem with anger, most likely you do." I said, "But that's the bad news." I said, "Well, what's the good news?" I said, "Good news is you're in the right place." So that's how I always started the thing. And but for example, one of the biggest things was just making that commitment to self and saying, "Look, I don't want to get out and come back." And remember, it took me at least 10 to 15 years before I actually decided I wanted to make that change. But in the meantime, I practiced uh, or did a lot of research, and I'm pretty sure you're aware of the in Florida DOC with the tags that has a letter is a zero, and then it
Hmm.
starts with letters A, B, and C in front of your ID number.
Yes.
So you could tell the people that either came back to prison or had another charge in prison.
Hmm.
So my question I asked myself, and this was the turning point, was okay, I want to talk to as many guys as possible and find out where they went wrong, what brought them back to prison.
And what's interesting is I did
And
a
I said, the
lot
reason,
of that too when I was doing it as the mental health person, because I always felt like I was a facilitator of knowledge. I would take what some people said and then give it to other people, both what worked and what didn't work. So it's interesting that we both did something very similar. Sorry, go
right.
ahead.
And then, so just say basically between 20 and 25 years of research, I boiled down to three things. And it all came down to this. One, for the guys that were released and were part of coming back for whatever reason. And of course, there are some exceptions, which I truly understand. But for the majority, let's just say 98% of all the guys that returned fell into three categories. One, they went out and recommitted or committed new crimes. Two, they got involved in drugs and alcohol. And drugs, by the very definition, is commit another crime because they were illegal. And those two were the obvious ones. But the one that really, really took me a long time to grasp, and it's very insidious, is relationships. And I'm not necessarily talking about romantic relationships. I'm just talking about relationship with family members, friends they left out.
Yep.
And guys, no matter how they explain their story, how it happened, it came down to those three things. And the other part too that was very astonishing was that the majority, I would say over 70% of the guys that returned were within the first year. And the ones that were the real issue came within the first 30 to 90 days. And remember, this is just straight out information. I talked to guys and I learned. So I asked myself, what am I going to do to change that, to not to be that statistic about recidivism? And this is where it get interesting. In the future, that's why I said I want to talk about this, but I want to break it down on the process. But for example, in my situation, I was in county jail for 6 months, and I had already put in place all these things that I wanted to do once I got released, because many people think that I had this wishful thinking. But my point was, once I went back to court, I had the hope, and in my heart, there was no doubt that I was being released. And I was blessed to have others, family members, and friends who were willing to help me.
Mhm.
But I came to the conclusion that I had to take a radical step. And this was the radical step. And keep in mind, just a side note, I had no probation, no parole, no kind of supervision. I volunteered, I volunteered to go to a halfway house as part of my release. Why? Because I understood the transition from long-term incarceration to freedom. And I needed a, a point where I could say, okay, I need a timeout. And most guys would scream and say, there is no way I'm going to a halfway house, a drug program, anything after all these years. I
Yep.
said, okay, but stop and think. If you want to be successful and you understand that all these temptations are going to be out there, what better place to go to a halfway house that understands and has put measures in place to facilitate a successful reentry. Now, keep in mind, the halfway house I went to is unique. They deal with nothing but long-term offenders. The average person at this halfway house had been incarcerated 25 years.
Wow.
There were a couple females that spent over 30 years. Annie was a lady that spent 41 years in prison. So this was, and this is something we can get into the future. I don't know if you ever heard of the program, the Lifers program,
Hmm.
and it's only at
Everglades, right?
it's only at every, yes. And I was there for my last 7 years. But point being that, back to the topic, was I understood after all these years of research that if I wanted to be successful, I had to do some radical changes.
And
And
I just want to
another point of
interrupt.
interest here is when,
I really appreciate this coming from you because I've said it and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. When I was in the prison system and I would say, you really need to go to a halfway house, you need a step down. And it was irrelevant how long they were incarcerated, because that extra support, that extra guidance is really so important when people are leaving the prison system. So it's really, I find great comfort that you're saying the same thing. So hopefully people listen.
right. And I said, it is coming from, and that's another thing I want to interject. And that's the biggest thing, that as criminal thinking goes, the very first thing is whoever is putting out information that goes contrary to what we believe, we had to put them in a defensive position to defend all their positions they hold. And the very first number one excuse we can use as criminal thinking is, you don't understand my position. You haven't been here. And I understand that because I played that game. But, and I put an emphasis, I always told guys in the classes too, was you have to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. And this is where I get a lot of flack from, because I don't want anyone's sympathy. I don't want you to feel sorry for me because you can't understand what I've been through. But now, if you can empathize with me, then I'm with you. But here's the great thing about it. Most people say, well, I've never been in prison. Okay, I don't, well, let's go beyond that level on empathy. Let's talk about human struggles, daily, everybody struggles, or everybody's happy, however. So it's a universal language, but are we willing to communicate that? And that was a difficulty. But I haven't lost the original point. Okay, so this halfway house really emphasize that because as soon as we were, as soon as I got to the halfway house, I had not, and you got to remember, this was not a structured halfway house. It was a program that had a lot of halfway houses, which were actually just houses where we were housed, but they had the infrastructure for all the things that we needed to succeed. The very first thing, getting identification, clothing, employment, all those things were there. But the other part was the peer led effort, where most of the guys that were at this halfway house, all I did time with it, and that was a plus. But they also told me, okay, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And they gave me all the information. But that is where I had to put the work in, because information, if I didn't act on that information, it wasn't going to help me.
Mhm.
But by the same token, that's the same thing that I'm talking about in prison. There are many resources available that guys don't take advantage of, which are needed to succeed. The simple one, like getting a social security card in DOC. There's no excuse not to have a social security card if you don't have one, because they make it free of charge. All you got to do is get you with your classification officer and they will help you. If you have court costs, traffic tickets, all those things, they can help you with. But guys said, no, I'll take care of all that when I get out. And guess what? They're
Or
overwhelmed once.
exactly. But what I've also found out is a lot of the stuff, it's not really advertised to that these resources are available. So it's about hanging out with people that are doing right. Because classification doesn't put a big announcement that says, we can help with this, we can help with that. But what happens is if you're hanging out with the right people and going to programs and joining groups, you find out this information. And I think that's an important part.
Right. And that's also part of the, however you want to call it, Finstagram, inmate.com. And that, especially those last 7 years that I was at Everglades, like I said, I already had the mindset. That was another little side thing I did. I made it a point to bring information to the table. I had resources on the outside, family members and friends that would send me information that I could share with the compound, whether it's about when they changed the laws for the MP4 players. Well, I was talking about what this JPay player was, coming. A lot of things, canteen, what the canteen price was going, and they would say, well, you get all this information. Yes. But the thing was, I made it a point to get the information because I wanted to share with guys, here are the resources, here's the information. But now what are you going to do about it? And that's the same thing with me. But it was, I had to make that commitment and to be very clear about what I want to do. But that segues into another thing. What about all these programs, and let's say self-help programs, but also the guys that don't want to take advantage of the therapists because they get they don't want to be labeled as weak, or they don't want to be considered, or that you are not emotionally stable. And like I said, part of the commitment that I made to myself was, okay, I can criticize others and I can focus on others defects, default, uh thinking minds they go into. Why do you do that to myself? And one of the things that one day I made a list of all the pros and all the cons. And I said, okay, let's not focus on the pros. Let's just focus on the cons. Uh, I had anger issues, communication problems, alcohol, all of those things. I said, okay, what do I need to help myself? First and foremost, I need to ask for help, realize that I have a problem, and then ask for help. And then going forward, it took years to check all these things off. But the point was, it had to be done on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And most guys were not willing to do that because, for example, I'm pretty sure you heard about the honeymoon phase in recovery. First 6 months, everything is going great. Especially the first 30 days. Oh yeah, everything going. There's a reason why they have a 30-day chip for that reason. But the point is, long-term sustained recovery and a commitment to being successful. And this is what I used to tell the guys. I don't care how you define success, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, and you defined it, then every day after that, whatever actions you take either adds to you success or takes away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that you have to really, really search for, because at the end of the day, if you fail or succeed, you can only take into consideration what you define as your goals and how you define success. So that was part of my exit strategy. And I had to really look at those things. And like I said, it's a process and it took years. And most guys are not willing to commit to that kind of effort. So those are the things that I look at. But I said, all these topics have a history. And in the most part, I don't want to get into some things that are not, for me personally, I can talk for me, but there's other situations that really brought to light and experiences that involve other people. And of course, I could talk about that, but it'll be in general terms, because always respect other people's anonymity.
Yeah.
And that's important, because what's important is the principle, not the personality. And in our society, people want us focus on the personality and not the principle.
Yeah. That's exactly correct. Instead of looking at how it applies to everybody, or people that have similar thinking patterns or similar behaviors, they want to say it's unique to this person or unique to that person, and then also take a lot of the personal characteristics of that individual and then say, well, it doesn't apply to me, even though the general principle does apply to them. I see that a lot as well.
And another thing and like I said, one of the reasons why I got involved in facilitating, besides I went to the classes, self-help group, for my personal recovery, advancement, enrichment, however you want to put it. But I got into facilitating for two reasons. One, I thought the information was important, and it had to be from the perspective of a peer. Like you said, it's easy to have a therapist get up there and say it, but the first thing, like I told you, they're going to say, well, what do you know about being in prison? You've never been in prison. You've never been in my situation. That was the first part. But the second part, and most guys miss this as facilitators, you have to walk the walk. Because one thing about it, and not only criminals in common, but just people in general, but specifically criminals, because there's a lot of guys in prisons and there are not criminals. And that may sound odd, but think about it. Criminal personalities, criminals, they will spot a fake, a guy that's feeding them on a BS. So they'll criticize you at first and they'll test you, but when they see you year after year walking the same walk, then they say, well, this guy is doing something right. But as you facilitate, that's the first thing. I mean, that's the second part. But another part of the second, a B part of that second part is that as you facilitate, you are sharing an experience, or as they say, what's the 50 cents word they use? Experiential, where you really have to, if you haven't experienced this, then you just talking intellectually or theoretically, however you want to put it. But once you've been in that process and you understand you're doing daily, and guys come and ask you, and then you realize, okay, I have to be honest with myself first and foremost before I can be honest with someone else, and really explain to them. So as this process evolved, I had to think, and I'm pretty sure you heard those saying, thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And in my classes as a facilitator, I would illustrate this in a very simple manner. I don't know if you ever heard of this one, but what I would do is I would take my ID off and hold it up to them. You see, I said, you see this idea? I mean, this ID? They said, yes. I said, this is inside this ID or this little box contains all your thoughts, feelings, experience, frame of reference, all these things. I would go on and on to. I said, but they're just yours. I said, thinking outside the box, you have to incorporate new way of thinking, new way of feeling, all these things. So you have to step out of this comfort zone intellectually, physically, emotionally, to be able to experience this. So if you never leave that comfort of your own thinking, then there will be no progress. For example, let's take it in prison. One of the most radical things that most people don't understand in prison, the way of thinking for a person who's never been in jail or in trouble is counterintuitive, because all the things that we as free citizens think before we go in there that are okay are not okay in prison. And there are some of the dumbest convict rules that you can think of. Don't make eye contact with someone. And it was like, why not? That's just a normal thing on the outside.
Yeah.
Greeting people, tell them it's a good day or how you do. All just, I mean, it goes on, and you would think, well, why is it such a radical way of thinking? But until you come to understand this on a daily basis, year after year, you have been around this way of thinking so long that it becomes normal.
Yeah, it's socialization. It's socialization
Yeah.
to the norms, customs of that environment.
So once you get out, that is one of the things that, well, for myself, when I got out, that's one of the biggest things I had to confront. And I mean, there's just so many things, but always I have to really put it, and most people have used this. If you watch any prison channels, this is the number one thing: Walmart. Walmart is just one of those things. For example, when I got out, I was
Overwhelming.
out on, yeah. Um, I'm pretty sure you can see the way I think. I'm more rational. I like to think and see things, observe and learn. So when I say about the Walmart experience, it just was, it was not overwhelming as far as the situation. To me, it was just a big laboratory in social norms. Okay, the very first thing I noticed was the dress code. Now, I just happened to go to a Walmart in Tampa on, let's just say, we'll call it what we call it. They call it the ghetto Walmart. Therefore, the things that I saw people wearing were just outrageous to me and to some people. Okay. And remember, it was like this, it was the same night the same day I got out, that night I went to Walmart. A friend picked me up and we went there. Well, I see this young lady, I say she's in her late teens, early 20s. The only thing that she was wearing was a long white t-shirt, nothing underneath. And she made it obvious that she didn't care that everybody saw.
Everything.
Yes. Or we can use the fancy word genitalia. Okay. But anyway, the point being, that was one. And at the speed that people were moving, I'm talking about, and I make a joke about it now. At this Walmart where I live at, I tell the greeters there, I say, why aren't you announcing that welcome to Walmart 500 sponsored by Donald Trump, because the stimulus checks have his name on it. But they don't like that. They don't like my Donald Trump hat either. So, but the point, but then also the other thing was just like I said, the dress code, the manner in which people socialize or the lack thereof. Also, just the speed at which everything. The other thing that was really, really amazing. My friend asked me. He took me to the section where they had all the snacks, because he knew I enjoyed cookies. So I was there for about 10 minutes. Just didn't even do anything. I just stepped back and looked at all the choices. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I said, in prison, we have very few choices,
Yeah.
which were already decided for us. So, I mean, he like looking at me, he said, man, just get something, man. He said, get 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want difference. He said, I'm paying, I'm giving you whatever you want. And so it was just that, and just the choices, the way of the kiosk, which was not big, things, but just the idea of having all these choices, all these different people, and specifically women, because of course you understand that the
Yeah.
women in prison, a privilege that we got to see, and we won't talk about all the horse
No.
tails and all that stuff going on, but let's not focus on that. But the point being that too, and the other thing, interaction. I mean, it's just so normal. Today I do it, and it's I'm in the South, so that's what it's still, regardless, still tradition. But I still say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, thank you, please. All it's just one of those things that's ingrained in me. But but the point being that some guys there at that Walmart just were not into any of that stuff. They were just straight going, as they call it, thugging out. They didn't care, the driving, all those things. But then I
So
went back. Go ahead.
that's interesting, because it's kind of where some of the people that you ran into in Walmart, they themselves still had a prison mentality.
Oh yeah, but it's not so much the prison. Like I said, it goes back to the criminal mindset,
Yeah.
the thinking, because and they make themselves out to be victims too. And I'm like, you're not a victim. You're a victimizer. You really are committing crimes, and you really you don't care about it.
Mm-mm.
And now that was the first day, but now here's the other thing: as time went by, and I'm not sure if specifically in Florida, I don't know about other states, but I know in Florida, most halfway houses and drug treatment programs are in the hood, or in the
Yeah.
most. Okay. Therefore, you should have seen some of the interactions I had with guys, and they would come up to me and they were offering me all kinds of drugs, this and that, and involving criminal behavior. Now, this is where it gets dicey, and I think some people are going to disagree. But for the record, let's just say this. I'm going to start with, I did not lose my criminal thinking patterns. I just suppressed them or have dealt with them in a different way. But let's not to what's the day, the 10th?
Yeah. May 10th.
The 17th will be exactly 3 years since I've been released.
That's awesome.
Uh-huh. But here's the thing, that same thinking is still here.
Yeah.
I just choose not to act on it. But now, going back to all the temptations I was offered, I had to make a choice. I could either be negative about the situation or positive, or somehow try to resolve a conflict. And just a little side note, I was involved in a lot of conflict resolution in prison, and whether it was as a mediator or arbitrator, and we can get into that later. But these are the skills that I learned, and it's pretty simple. Let's just take you for example. You're married,
Mhm.
and there in your relationship, there's always going to be conflicts. What you want to do and what your husband wants to do. We all have the same 24 hours. That makes everyone the same. We all have the same 24 hours. How we choose to take advantage of those 24 hours, and that's up to you. But getting to the conflict. So, for example, by definition, if you just said yes to an amount of time that you're not going to spend on this interview, that means you have to say no to other things.
Yes.
Okay. However, the motivation will be called into question. Why are you doing this versus doing that? Well, obviously, it's important to you, and it's
Yes.
part of your way of helping. And like all good things, you as a therapist, you always want to help, but you also want to do research, and that's those things. Okay. So if you have that conflict with your husband, you can defend your position with all these positive things. Okay. Now, for example, with me in a criminal mindset, I have to defend my position, but also take into consideration the other criminal thinking and some way resolve that conflict. For example, guys that were with me when these guys approached us, they would say, "Oh man, no, let me get into heated arguments or start being self-righteous and all this." I would tell the guys, "Stop, stop." I said, "Let's back this up a little bit. Okay, if this guy is a criminal and he recognizes you as or ex-criminal, his way of thinking is, I'm going to offer what I think you want or what you're accustomed to." And specifically, if this guy has done drugs and alcohol and crime with you, he comes and say, "Hey, Joe, let's do some weed, or let's go smoke, or let's go rob somebody, or let's go do whatever." He's used to that behavior, so he's going to offer you something he's used to you've done. Okay, but now that person has been in recovery and doing all these positive things. I say, okay, think about it. I would say, let's tell him no, but we're going to tell him no in a way that he understands. And my way of thinking was, look, man, I'm good. And to make sure they didn't come back, I said, think about this. I said, if I need something or I want to do something, I'll holler at you later. Therefore, I put the emphasis that I was going to talk to them if I want them. And guess what? 9 times them guys wouldn't come back, because guess what? They're about making that dollar. Whoever gets into it first, that's who they go deal with. And so if you don't spend the money with them, you don't do nothing with them, they don't want to interact with you anymore. But if you start arguing with them and tell them all these things and make them feel bad about their behavior and all that, now they have some resentment, that they might hold a grudge against you, and they're really rooting for you to
Yeah.
fail because they don't want they want to be right and you wrong.
And there's always that saying, you protest too much. Dolph protests too much, meaning you're not solid in how you feel, how you think, and what you want. Otherwise, you wouldn't be yelling and screaming. You'd be nice and quiet and do exactly what you're saying, where you say, you know what, man, I'm not interested, but I know where to find you. But if you're trying to, yell and, be aggressive, generally aggression is a lot of fear behind it. Aggression is typically a lot of fear.
Yes. Now, the other thing, and this is why I tell you where I'm going to talk about anything in my situation. And of course, I had the plan, I had all the tools available to me. But by the same token, some things are more difficult than others. For me, honestly, one of my biggest hurdles were the women. And just think about it, all this time, and then someone shows affection, or they were just, just the physical or the companionship. And believe it or not, I got a, I'll go ahead and pat myself on the back already. I got a lot of compliments for being a gentleman, because even though I already understood what I wanted, I made it a point to actually go out on dates. And now keep this in mind, I was in a halfway house using public transportation because I didn't even have a license or anything like that. But I was willing to take, women to a restaurant, take them somewhere, watch a movie, talking and wait. But it was understood from the very beginning what the outcome was. And I really had to hold back, because just my mind of thinking, men and women are different, in that way of thinking. And have you read the books about, the book about men are from Mars, women from Venus?
Yes.
Okay. But I tell people I can narrow that book down real quick. Before I read that book, I understood that. And this is where I tell God, always know what you think and why you think it. For example, a real short version of that book is, for men, for the majority of men, we're task oriented. You don't see many men go to Walmart with a
What is
shopping list.
what is that
That's my horse.
noise?
That was a horse. That was a horse. No,
Why is
that's
there a
a
horse? What?
that's my. I'm in the country. No, okay, but here's the thing.
Get out of here.
Yes. Next time you get a chance, Google Walterboro, South Carolina.
I got a horse outside too, but she's all the way out in a field. You can't hear her.
Yeah.
What does your horse want to eat?
I'm gonna train him. But listen, but anyway, so here's the thing. How many men do you see go into Walmart with a shopping list? Or better yet, here's the one I always tell women. How many men do you know window shop? We're task oriented. I go to a store, I already know what I want. I go directly to what I want. I get it, come out and leave. I don't want to go see shoes, purses, and all that stuff. That's not something I want. But the point being that, so when a lot of in normal society, there's a lot of unspoken rules of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the opposite sex, especially if a person's single and they haven't been incarcerated for a long time, let's not play games. We know what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So I could be in my mind, I I want to say all these things, but no, I'm going to be patient, because, and this is not a something against all women in general, but specific women. If, for example, I meet a woman one day and that same day I have sex with her, that says a lot about her. Of course, it makes me a dog, but hey, let's not go there. We're not focusing on me right now. We focus, but no, for real. So that's something I had to learn, because, like I said, I want to be successful. And remember, I tell you about the relationships, and I understood that if I was going to get involved in a relationship, that it's going to be that easy, then it was just going to be trouble for me. And it took me a couple years to get that, and had to go, and I wouldn't say a lot of relationships or women, but just say I satisfied my curiosity, took that out the way. Now
And
I had,
that's something that I try to go over, and I did try to go over when I worked in the prison, was be careful of those relationships. Be wary of people that, I used to always say, like, when you're coming out of prison, no offense or anything, but you're pretty much a broken down horse. Like, if you find a woman that's like willing to attach her cart to you, you have to wonder about that female. Like, why would she attach herself to somebody that has so many issues, that's going to not have a lot of stability or experience, or, you know, be able to do everything that somebody else might be able to do? You got to question the motivation. Is it a rescue complex? Is it a control issue that she has? Like, what you might find a good person that has a good heart and that's the motivation, but usually that's not the motivation. That might be one in every 1,000.
Right. And I understand that. And that, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. The same thing with the people that start relationships in prison, women specifically. And I've seen some women, and beautiful women, and this is the first thing that comes to mind. If she's that good looking, just on the surface, we're not even going to ask her mental or emotional thing, but just she's that good. If she has problems finding a man on the outside where all the men are at, she has. But going back to my situation, and it was also recommended as part of being successful, is to not be involved in a serious relationship for at least 2 years. Some people go from 2 to 5, whatever. Okay, but now let's fast forward about the 2 year point. I got involved in a serious relationship. I have a girlfriend. She lives with me, and it's a solid relationship.
Good for you.
But I had to reach the point where I said, I do not want, as us men call it, in the game, playing the field. I'm done with that. I don't want. And we had a serious discussion before it happened. I said, look, I'm not into the game. I don't want to have fun. I want to be involved in a stable relationship. This is what I offer. This is what I look for. These are my goals. This and um, and she agreed. She says, she explained to me what she wanted and everything. I'm 55. She's 62. Okay. Now, fast forward another year we've been in this relationship. I've been able to stay solid in my work. I have 2 vehicles. Matter of fact, a couple months ago, I bought a brand new car, 2020 Dodge Journey. I have a work van, and I'm staying focused on being successful. I'm not doing drugs, smoking, committing criminal acts, go to church, helping others, and just being involved in positive stuff.
Good.
And a little side note, if you have noticed by now, as a rule, I do not use profanity. And the reason for that is that it's part of my conflict resolution style. Because in prison, once you start using profanity, and out here too, but once you start using profanity, then people think they can use profanity and then they take offense to it, they personalize it, and before you know it, it becomes a physical violence thing. So I got so much trouble with my fellow inmates, and also because of profanity, I came to the conclusion that profanity was not working for me. Some people can pull it off.
Yeah.
For me, I wasn't able to pull it off. Therefore, I had to take care of that situation. But all things, like I said, like my drinking, my anger issues, that those are things I had to confront. Now, here's another thing that is really an issue with me. There was an issue with me in there and out here. By definition, I am a loner. And in all the recovery circles and all doing them times, being a loner is counterproductive,
Mm-hmm.
especially guys in prison that, I don't know if you heard the term, the walls closing in on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in prison, guys stop socializing little by little. Before you know it, they spend all their time in the room reading, writing, listening to music. It gets to a point, if they have a roommate, if they're behind the door, they got a roommate, it starts a conflict because they never give the roommate time alone. So I've been criticized for being antisocial and lacking empathy because I spend time by myself. And I'm so good at it, I can spend time alone, mentally, emotionally, in a group of people. I go through all the motions, but I'm not really there. I'm just going along with it. And it's difficult. Like, for example, yesterday, I went out to the river. Like I said, I live out here in the middle of nowhere. Took my car, just went out to the river and meditated on it and just enjoyed because of this COVID-19. They just recently opened, last week, they opened up here in South Carolina. So these are the things that I understand. But one thing that I don't do is withdraw a lot. I still do it, but I just don't do it where it causes conflict with my significant other, family members, and friends.
Yeah.
But they understand that that's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
And they don't criticize because I'm not doing anything negative. And you know, that's just two, like I said before, that's just a couple of the issues that I have. But given the opportunity, I will speak in public, I will do things. People say, oh, it's great. But when they see that I spend all this time alone, and they're like, okay, I said, but here's the thing. You look at the negative side, but look at the positive side. How many people can be alone with their own thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Be codependent on someone else. And that came from the practice of meditation.
I know for me, I'm very similar, and it's just part of being an introvert that you're very comfortable sitting with your own thoughts. Some people have to run away from their thoughts, or they're not comfortable sitting with their thoughts or being alone. For me, I'm very introverted as well. I go on vacations by myself. My husband's pretty introverted too, so it's kind of good. He understands, I understand. We're very, we're our own people. With
You
our,
can you
we're
compatible.
compatible.
And this is because that's another thing that, like I said, is part of the relationship. And I used to draw the thing on the board is a triangle, the side about committing the crimes, getting involved in drugs, and then on the base I'll put the relationship, because remember, we just, by definition, we're social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We interact with a lot of, and that was one of the part of the things that I say was that being able to understand my relationship with others, what I expect of them and what they expect of me. And one of the things I had to realize was that first and foremost, I want to be successful. And how I say successful is the way I define it. But by the same token, the other person in a relationship with, I want them to be successful. I want them to succeed at their goals and be happy, however you define that. And if I see they're not doing that, then as a friend, I'm going to hold them accountable for that. And that's another thing we did in prison about having mentors and mentees. And I mean, I could spend days talking to you about all the programs I'm on, all the process. But the point was, all those things, I'm out here in the free world applying them on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So when I surround myself with people that I respect and I want them to succeed, and I really admire all these things. And of course, we're humans. We have flaws. By definition, we're imperfect. If we were perfect, then we wouldn't be humans. But the point being that is, I want them to reciprocate by saying, okay, here's the things that you told me that you want to succeed at, but I see that you're doing these things that are counterproductive. And that's what I want to be helped, because I want to be around a group that wants to succeed. But in order to succeed, I have to take constructive criticism in, but also give it. And we hold each other to a higher standard. And sometimes guys in prison as part of their reentry plan are not willing to surround themselves inside or out with mentors or people that want to succeed. And that is crazy. I think that.
Yeah.